So mistake number one is not washing your skin before you exfoliate. Remember, there's different levels of cleanliness. There's the superficial stuff you got to get off with your cleanser, then there's the deeper. So you want to make sure that you use a nice gentle cleanser, then you exfoliate. Don't go straight to exfoliation. And I kind of know this happens because I've been told by some of our own patients and customers that they use the polish as a cleanser. And that's not how it's supposed to use. So make sure you know, in our line, rinse goes first, then polish would go next when you're exfoliating on this particular day. So make sure it's nice and clean slate, then use your exfoliator. Don't make the mistake of using the exfoliator as a cleanser. Number two is probably the most common mistake that's made. There's a lot of lines that have physical exfoliators. They're like beads, there's spheres, there's bamboo, there's irregular shapes, all these different things, and you're using it as a scrub, right? So you're scrubbing it. Now, this is where things get a little hairy, because how are you supposed to know how hard to scrub, how hard to press, how long to scrub? Because if you do too much of it, too much pressure, too long, too aggressive, too intense, what you're doing is you're creating micro tears with these physical exfoliators. The round spheres are better than irregular shaped in general, but even with those, if you go too hard and go too long with that, you're gonna create micro tears. Your skin's gonna come out looking red and it's gonna be a little bit irritated. It's gonna dry it out. It's gonna create micro tears, all of which will create two different potential issues. One is surface of the skin gets swollen, products don't work as well. Oil becomes increasingly, produced in response to this. So if you have oily skin, you'll get more oily skin. If you have dry skin, you actually get more dry skin. So there's this physical micro trauma issue that comes from the physical exfoliants that you got to be very careful. So generally speaking, if you're going to use a physical exfoliator, be very gentle, just light scrubbing motion, not a lot of pressure. Let the spheres or the shapes do whatever they're going to do to kind of like gently slough it off. But don't get into this mentality that harder, more aggressive is better and you're going to have a better outcome with the exfoliation. You're going to get more out of it. You're not. You're actually going to worsen your situation. Mistake number three is exfoliating too often. Same principle as exfoliating too hard, whether it's a chemical, physical, or enzymatic, and you're doing it too often. What you're doing basically is you're not only, obviously, you're stripping the natural oils, all these things are important, but you're also violating and negatively affecting the skin barrier. Now, what is a skin barrier? Skin barrier is a very popular term that's being used, but it's actually very important. I'm glad there's awareness around the skin barrier. And what the skin barrier does, it's the functional barrier and the function of the skin. It's like, what is the skin there for? It's there to bolster an immune response to microbes and viruses and different things like that. So it's functioning in that way. It's keeping pollutants and irritants and stuff that's in the environment out of our inside by protecting our, blocking it from getting through our skin. And of course, it's doing all the normal sort of, pore functions, all the things that happen between sweat glands and oil glands and all that other stuff. So there's a functional aspect of skin that needs to be maintained. And if you exfoliate too often, you are weakening the skin barrier and exposing yourself to some of the consequences of that. So make sure you pay attention to how often you're supposed to. Now, generally speaking, like physical exfoliators, you're supposed to do anywhere from 1 to 2 times a week. But read their direction of the particular brand you're looking at very carefully. Chemical, depending on how strong the acid is, a very, very light lactic acid, you may be able to do it once a day. Generally speaking, it's probably not a good idea to exfoliate in any condition once a day. Maybe it's every other day with a very light lactic acid, and some stronger acids like once a week, right? Polish, which is an enzymatic, and anything in that enzymatic category, we recommend 2 to 3 times a week. More is not better in this case. More often is not better. So just be aware you follow the instructions carefully for the reasons that you're doing. And in that same vein, exfoliating too long while you're doing it is too, like we have, it's like 3 minutes to 5 minutes max on the polish. You don't want to leave it on too long. It's going to irritate the skin. Same thing goes for physical, chemical. Like you don't want to leave this stuff on your skin longer than it's directed because you're actually making the matter worse. So slow and gentle over the long run is the name of the game when it comes to these exfoliators. Number 4 is skin type dependent. The rule of thumb is if you have very sensitive skin, you're either going to use like an enzymatic exfoliator or your very, very light chemical, like lactic acid, very light. You won't want to use physical on sensitive skin. Your skin will respond by redness and inflammation, all that stuff. If you have normal skin, you can use any of these categories. If you have acne-prone skin, you're better off using chemical or enzymatic because the physical exfoliators can cause the irritation that will lead to more acne. So keep that in mind. If you have oily skin, any of the categories will work, but keep in mind if you over-exfoliate or do it too aggressively, you're actually going to produce more oil in response. So a little counterintuitive, but you're actually getting more oil production. So be aware that you're not being too aggressive with these techniques. For dry skin, the same thing applies to oily skin. Generally speaking, however, a enzymatic tends to be a little bit safer, a little bit less harsh, because you go too hard on the other ones and you dry your skin out more, that obviously becomes an issue. So as gentle as possible on dry skin is better. And the fifth mistake that people make is they exfoliate and they walk away. The fact is that after an exfoliation session, your skin needs to be nourished. It needs to be given some moisture back. It needs to be given some of the things that are going to soothe the skin. So things like moisturizer, hyaluronic acid, ceramides, lipids, all these things are going to feed the skin properly and get the skin sort of responded and healed up from the exfoliating event. So don't think of the exfoliating event as the end all. You need to nourish it at the end.